BMillzebub, and welcome to a new Apostate Interviews. Today I've got Renével with me. You probably recognize him from Twitter, and also has a YouTube channel which he co-hosts called Veritas Voices. How you doing, René?
I'm doing good so far. Yeah, I'm very excited to join you here on your YouTube channel. Yeah, it's true. I have a few weeks ago with a friend of mine, Lilith Liberated, as she's known on Twitter, or just Lilith, started a YouTube channel. It's called Veritas Voices. I think the links are included below, so thank you for that again. And we talk about various things, including atheism, including also science, including some religious arguments or religious assertions with which some of our interlocutors on Twitter make. So we do all kinds of stuff. Also one thing which we started recently is sort of a series where we collect some of the tweets we see on Twitter, which we find very unreasonable or flat out ridiculous, and we talk about why we find them unreasonable, why they're ridiculous, and yeah, what objections we have.
All right. But yeah, everybody, just so you know, you can find René's personal Twitter in the description, the Veritas Voices Twitter, as well as the Veritas Voices YouTube channel. But yeah, so I mean, you've kind of talked about your channel a little bit. So what religion did you used to practice, or did you?
It's not really sort of a religion that I used to practice. I was pretty much the closest what one would describe to as a deist or as an apatheist. Like, I did believe in a god, but it wasn't really a particular god, and also this belief didn't really influence my life hugely. Like, I did believe that there was some sort of a god, but at the same time I didn't really care if there was a god, sort of. But also another part of it was that I am in Germany, where I live and where I grew up. You sort of have religious classes, and I went to sort of the Catholic sector because, yeah. And there I also learned about Jesus and about a little bit of the Gospels, but I never bought into any of that stuff. I think the first time I learned about Jesus was, I think, when I was 6 years old, when I had my first class, and pretty much I rejected the whole stuff that was sort of brought to me at age 9, because I didn't find it reasonable that a person was raised from the dead after thinking about it. And yeah, I just believed in a God which would allow everyone to heaven and which would send nobody into hell. It wasn't really backed up by any doctrine or by any scripture. And but then at age 19, when I started to actually care about whether my beliefs are true, I started to investigate what I believed, why I believed it, and I found out that there isn't really any good reason to believe in any God, and there are lots of good reasons to believe that most, if not all, of these gods which are proposed to humanity are in fact fictional. So that's why I'm an atheist right now.
All right. I actually kind of want to talk about being an atheist in Germany, because I don't want to say I got a taste of it because I was on an American military base, so I really have no idea what the German experience is like. Could you tell me what it's like being an atheist over there?
Well, I think at least in my age group, it's pretty normal. Like, nothing unusual, but I'm also not like, in my personal life, with my studies and with my friends, I'm not like the person who runs out with an unabashed atheist t-shirt who is like, in your face, I'm an atheist, debate me, that sort of stuff. I mean, for anybody who's interested or anybody who asks me what my religious beliefs are, I tell them that I'm an atheist and that I don't believe in God and any of that stuff. But the occasion doesn't come up often. But when the occasion comes up and when I tell them, yeah, I'm an atheist, it's like usually, yeah, whatever. and some of them tell me, yeah, I may identify as a Christian, but I don't believe they're not interested of either. Or some of them tell me, yeah, I'm agnostic. Or it's not really something that people of my age and my age group really think out or elaborate on, which is also, I think, one of the reasons why I was apathetic to the topic for most of my life.
All right. Are there still blasphemy laws over there? Because I remember seeing a couple articles about people being fined or something for blasphemy. Or no, it was a license plate being rejected.
Well, I'm not too sure about that, actually. I think people wouldn't mind it, or you couldn't get arrested if you said, well, I think Jesus of the Gospels is a dick, or if you draw Muhammad or any of that stuff. But at least in criminal law, I don't think that you can get punished for it. But I do think that if you were to go over the top with insulting somebody for being a Christian or that sort of stuff, I think that could get you into trouble at least.
All right.
But I don't think it's like anywhere near as horrible as would be in Islamic states or anything like that.
All right. I think I can kind of guess at this, but I'll ask anyway because I prefer to make as few assumptions as possible. What are your thoughts on being punished for blasphemy?
Well, obviously, I think it's bullshit. I mean, I think that freedom of speech is very important. I think that ideas deserve to be criticized. I think that religion is a harmful idea. I think that religious beliefs are false, or many religions are false, and I think that they should be challenged, they should be called out. And one way to challenge and to call out ideas is say that, yeah, the God of the Bible is a dick, or that Jesus wasn't a great moral teacher, or fuck Muhammad, or any of that stuff. Because while it may not necessarily be the most productive, at least with such brash statements, you get people thinking like, was the Jesus of the Gospel a good moral teacher? I mean, I always assumed that he was just this meek, nice little man, and I don't think he was. And if somebody goes out and challenges that with bold statements, then I think that can be helpful.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I just remembered. My brain is not running on all cylinders to take a phrase out of people who work on Carr's books. But being in the EU, you're going to be under something called Article 13, which is pretty restrictive, especially in the religious sense. It is going to make it difficult to criticize religion. Do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Well, like pretty much most people who have encountered the problem with Article 13, I'm also not a fan of it because it censors content creators. And especially with religious stuff. Like, I think that if you have a platform like YouTube, you should be able to speak your mind. I mean, I get that YouTube is a private company, and that or with Article 13 that there needs to be some sort of legislation, but pretty much everyone I know of within YouTube or within the public sphere in general is against Article 13. And there have been, I think, also petitions against it, and pretty much nobody but the people in power want Article 13 to be passed. So I think that if we are in this sort of union, and if the general public doesn't want Article 13, then I think that as a part of the Union, of the European Union, that should be honored. And if they passed anyways, and if they censor people against the will of the people, then that really isn't what we signed up for in Europe.
All right. Yeah, I can't say I've seen a whole lot of support coming from Europeans for Article 13, but it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
So let's change up the topic a little bit. We keep doing this weird flip-floppy thing between your channel and you. So let's talk a little bit more about Renee. What I'm trying to, maybe the best way to phrase this was what was the silliest thing you used to believe as a deist?
Well, one thing which I used to believe with, I don't know which the silliest thing was, but I did think at one time, and I think that ranks really up here, really high up there. And I used to believe that sort of the dreams that I had in my sleep, that they sort of had a prophetic future and stuff for me. Like, for instance, if I believed that, or if I dreamed that I was gonna be attacked by a dog, then I believed that in the future I was maybe gonna be attacked by a dog, or something like that. Like I did think that my dreams sort of predicted my future in a sense, or had a relationship with something that was going to happen to me in the future, or yeah, that sort of stuff.
All right. Now this dream prophecy kind of thing, was that like just a thing you had, or did it extend to everyone and we just didn't know how to unlock it?
Well, the thing is, I did hear that this was apparently a thing within religion, that people had prophetic dreams, like the story from Joseph, I think, within Genesis, where he had the prophetic dreams. And also I do have quite realistic dreams, so that sort of like that sort of the cultural influence and the religious influence that you get maybe from visiting church once or twice in your life, where you maybe hear the story, and as a gullible child, then you sort of eat it up. And if you have a quite lucid, quite realistic dream, then you may be persuaded into believing that that may actually be the case. And that's also not something that I did hold to just as a 6-year-old. I think I held that pretty much also into my teens. Like, I do think that I also held that at age 16, that this is sort of a thing.
All right. You mentioned a few minutes ago believing that religion is harmful. I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, whether it was more in general or all of it was harmful, but would you consider yourself to be an anti-theist?
I would definitely consider myself to be an anti-theist. I mean, I am against religion, and I'm also sort of a proponent of epistemic responsibility, which means that I think that ideas which are wrong or not reasonable or not evidence-based are harmful. And I think religion, or pretty much all religions, fall into the category to a varying degree. Like, obviously, deism is not as harmful as would be Islam, but I think that's still deism if you have a belief in an atheistic God, and if you hold to that quite devoutly, then maybe you will be more close to a natural mechanism for the Big Bang that may come up in the future, and that's also not good.
All right. So a fairly common thing I hear about people who don't understand anti-theism is that we want to outlaw all religion because we see it as harmful. Do you want to have religion outlawed?
It depends on what you would mean by outlaw. I would like to outlaw religion being actively taught in school, unless it is in a comparative religion class. Like I would not want the Bible, for instance, to be taught in history class or in science class or anything like that. But within a comparative religion class, that's all fine if you talk about all the faiths. And I would also not want to outlaw like people having a right to believe what they believe. I think that is a right that any human should have to believe whatever ridiculous nonsense they believe in. But I do think that freedom from religion is also important. Like you shouldn't have religion pushed on you within the public sphere. So religion outlawed to a degree, and we need to define what those degrees are. Like the state should not promote one religion over another, or should not promote theism over atheism. But should people have the right to pray in public, or should people have the right to go to church and to believe in Christianity? Absolutely. I don't think that they're reasonable, and I would, if they say that that is true, if they want to convert me, then I would obviously have a conversation with them about that, but they're free to believe what they want to believe.
And for anyone who hasn't heard an accurate description of anti-theism before, that's it. So what is it that got you to start questioning your deistic beliefs?
Well, it also pretty much started out with me subscribing to certain YouTube channels, which I'm not really engaged with right now, but sort of when you look for English YouTube channels or American YouTube channels and you engage in certain topics or try to find certain YouTube channels that talk about more political stuff or more cultural stuff, then two people which came up for me at least were The Amazing Atheist, TJ Kirk, and Jacqueline Glenn. Those were sort of two channels which I back in the day subscribed to, and to people whose YouTube videos I watched. Now, I was at that point a deist, but I watched some of the videos and I found myself agreeing with a lot of stuff they had to say about Islam or Christianity or that stuff. And also, this sort of changed the YouTube algorithm in a sense. So one channel which I also then found, because both of them were obviously atheists, was Hammett Matter from The Atheist Voice. He has a YouTube channel called The Atheist Voice. And then I also checked him out, and I didn't really know at that point what an atheist was like. I did know that there were people who didn't believe in God, but I couldn't wrap my head around what this person was believing. And then I just thought, well, yeah, you're bored at the moment. Let's just watch some of his videos. And I found myself agreeing with him on a lot of points, like the God of the Gaps. I realized, yeah, I do think that I actually don't have any good reasons to believe in God. Like, I do think that I employ the God of the Gaps as an I don't know, therefore God. And I found myself agreeing with him on a lot. I think he made a lot of great points, and I just saw myself shifting away from my beliefs a little bit. And then one night I took it upon myself to search for evidence for God. Like I said, okay, I will pull an all-nighter and I will just try to find evidence for God. I will search the entire internet and I will try to find what I would consider to be evidence. The next morning I found myself empty-handed, and I didn't find anything. Like, I found some arguments which I already knew and which I didn't find persuasive back in the day, like the first move and that stuff. And Kalam, which essentially led me to a beginning of the universe. By now I also reject the syllogism of Kalam, like the first three premises. I would reject premise one. But there was nothing that would lead me to a belief in a God. And I realized that at that morning. And then at that point, I realized that I didn't really have good reasons to believe in God, and then a few weeks later I was ready to admit, okay, I'm an atheist, I don't believe this anymore, I don't find this reasonable, there's no good reason to believe in this, so that's where I'm at.
So you had a little more of a aha moment than, like, in my experience, most people have this kind of really slow multi-year build into being an atheist. But for you, I mean, you said you spent a night searching for evidence, and by a couple weeks later, atheist. So
yeah, I mean, it was sort of a progress for me at the beginning with Jacqueline Glenn and with the amazing atheist and theist voice, and I found myself agreeing with them, and that sort of took me a little bit away, but then just came this really big jump like this. That's it. What am I gonna do now? Like, I don't find any reasons. I don't find this reasonable to believe in something which I don't have evidence for. So that was like the big realization for me.
all right. You mentioned using the gaps fallacy. I'm curious, do you remember like any specific examples where you did I don't know, therefore God?
Well, the big one is pretty much the beginning of the universe. Like, I at that point, within that stage of my life, I haven't really delved into cosmology and the science pertaining to the beginning of the universe, but I was pretty much of the mindset, well, I mean, we haven't found any mechanism yet, so, and everyone pretty much believes in God, so, and they must have a reason to believe in God, so obviously it was God. I mean, what else could it be, in a sense? Like, it was sort of, one thing was the God of the gaps, but also the argument from popularity, which I didn't realize that anyone else didn't have evidence either. I just assumed outright that they did have evidence without looking at it myself at that time.
One of those a billion people can't be wrong kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's this Muslim guy over there and there's this Christian guy over there. Like, yeah, they're probably wrong about these fundamentals, like they're wrong about Jesus, they're wrong about Muhammad, but there's no way they could be wrong about the existence of a God in general, right?
All right. So what got, like, did you become an anti-theist at the same time you became an atheist, or was that another kind of build up?
That was that pretty much evolved when I started on Twitter, because I didn't start on Twitter out to promote atheism. What I started out as, or what I did want to do on Twitter, which I occasionally still do now, was trying to educate creationists. You can imagine how that went, and I was just thinking, well, they're terribly wrong about this, and I'm sure they will appreciate a guy who doesn't have a PhD in biology, but who still knows enough to teach them why they're wrong, and can teach them a little bit about evolution. And what I found is that they weren't at all happy to engage with me about evolution, and they were very antagonistic. And at that point, I really discovered what fundamentalism is, because I haven't encountered that in my life, and that what they believed really was dogmatic to them, and that they were outright antagonistic to science, and that they were antagonistic to atheists, they were antagonistic to gay people, to many things or to people, to science, and to many things which I was supportive of. And I realized that their belief in God informed this antagonism towards other things which I held dear. And at that point, I realized, yeah, religion is harmful, and it's not just important to educate people, it's also important to look at the bigger picture and look at and realize that this ideology itself is doing the harm, like science denial, homophobia, those are the symptoms. But the real harm is the ideology itself, and that itself also needs to be fought.
All right. So let's move on over to talking about your channel a bit. And I just remembered I didn't mute my phone. So before that sucker goes off. What is it that, well, first of all, let's talk about how you chose your co-host, Lilith Liberated.
Well, with Lilith, I have known her for, I think, more than 2 years, and we haven't been close a long time, but like one day when I was sort of down and when I didn't feel good, I posted a tweet on Twitter. I'm not feeling good today. I'm not going to tweet today. See you tomorrow. And and at that point, Lilith sort of saw that tweet and she replied very nicely to me. And I knew her before as this fierce counter-apologist and as this person who takes no shit and who is also very antagonistic towards religion. But what I saw from her at that point was like a really genuine side, which I didn't know she had. And at that point, I was thinking to myself, yeah, she seems like a cool person. Let's try if I can maybe build a friendship with her. Like, let's see if I can talk more with her. And at that point, her and I built sort of friendship. Like, we talk a lot within DMs, or also we did some private hangouts, and at that point, when there was still another person back when we wanted to start a YouTube channel, which was Nick Suter, but he unfortunately left us. But we are always offline having conversations about religious stuff and religious beliefs, philosophy, science, and we were just thinking to ourselves, well, if we can do it offline, then why not record it? Why not post it online so that other people may benefit from our thoughts and from our conversations? So that's pretty much how the whole thing started, and that's pretty much what our channel is also for today. Like, what we want to do is we want to discuss ideas, we want to bring some ideas out, share our thoughts, share with people maybe how you can approach that argument or how you can engage that person, what the believer might be thinking, how you can engage them, why this argument is wrong, why that point of view is wrong, or why that approach to that certain thing is probably not the best one. So that's what we're doing right now.
Well, that actually answers my next question. Asking how you came to decide to start the channel. So I haven't had much of an opportunity to watch your videos. I've been busy taking care of my nephew and other things that life keeps me away from YouTube for.
Private life gets in the way.
Yeah. How would you describe your channel? Because just getting kind of a look at the face of it, it kind of looks more like a podcast format.
Well, currently we are recording it as a podcast, like within a format of posting tweets and discussing that. We sort of also add in pictures and like the pictures of the tweets, which we share. So currently it's only audio, but the way I would describe it is two friends just discussing ideas, talking about why we're atheists, the reason why we're atheists, why certain arguments are wrong, and what we think about the world. And we're currently doing it as purely audio format because we're still in the process of figuring it all out, like with the streaming and that stuff, like what program to use, how to set it all up in order to stream it live on YouTube. We're still working on that a little bit, and we do plan to also talk about it live in our future, like with our faces actually on, but that all needs work, especially with personal life getting in the way. Last week I started university again. Lilith, as she has shared on the YouTube channel as well as on Twitter, she is currently busy with moving to a new home. So we will try to improve upon the show in our future, but for now it's, for us at least, a priority to just get out content and to provide something for our viewers to enjoy, hopefully.
All right. Do you mind if I ask what you're studying?
I am studying law.
Oh, okay.
I'm in my 4th semester right now.
All right. I mean, you've kind of gone at it. You know, you sort of answered this already on a few occasions, but do you have any specific goals for your channel?
Well, obviously we wanna attract a lot of viewers. We wanna have more subscribers, obviously. I mean, that's always a goal, I think, for people on YouTube, but primarily we also wanna contribute to the debate. Like, get out arguments, get out our viewpoints. Also, for my own benefit, like when I encounter a person using Pascal's wager, her and I have I think 45 to 50-minute video on it, which we can share, which gets our perspective across, and in the future other arguments, hopefully. So it should be sort of a source for me and for her to share ideas, maybe also for other people if they think that we did a good job, but also to provide entertainment, to give people a new way to think about things, to maybe if people don't have an answer to certain arguments or certain assertions, give not necessarily the right perspective, but a way one could answer a few claims that believers make.
All right. So you haven't been doing the YouTube thing for very long, so you don't have a whole lot of videos that you could point to, but is there anything you've done on your channel that you're particularly proud of, or since you've been on Twitter even longer, is there anything from over there that you're particularly proud of achieving, or both?
Well, what I am sort of proud of, which is something that I wrote on in the past, was I did a 7-part series debunking an article by William Lane Craig on objective morality and his moral framework. That is, and it did get from the people who read it, did get good reviews. So I am proud of that. And one thing which happened quite recently, which I am also proud of, which is I did get a direct message from one of my followers. I wasn't aware of that person previously, but that person came out to me and she sent me a direct message and told me that I've given her a great perspective, that I have given her inspirations, and that she is an atheist in an area where it's not necessarily easy to be an atheist, but she always looks forward to seeing my tweets and to see the reasonable points I bring up, and I give her sort of an inspiration, and I help her with thinking about things. So receiving that as a compliment, that I have an impact on people, and that my arguments, or what I do on Twitter, what I do on YouTube, what I do in general has an impact on people, that is something that I take pride in.
That's definitely something to be proud of. That's not something everybody gets. So yeah, definitely take that and run. So, I mean, this this has been a really productive conversation, but we've burned through almost every topic I've got. I do have one last question for you, and since you were a deist, it might not apply. But is there anything from your former deism that you found particularly difficult to get over? I mean, you didn't have a fear of hell because you didn't believe in such a place, but that would be example I usually use for others that come on here.
Well, like what I did believe in is sort of difficult to put in a box because it does fit Christianity, it does fit Islam. I don't know if it also quite perfectly fits deism because I did believe in an afterlife, like in a sort of heavenly place. I just believe that everyone would go there, also Hitler. One thing which I had to come to terms with, which was difficult for me, was not necessarily my own death, because I don't fear not existing. What I did have to come to terms with, because I have had a few losses in my life, was the fact that I was never going to be able to see some of the loved ones in my life that I have lost. That was very difficult for me, and I've also said this on Twitter before, so it isn't really a mystery. But when I was 14, I lost my mom. She had cancer, and coming to grips with the fact that I was never going to see my mom again, that was hard for me. It didn't stop me, of course, but it was something that in those 4 weeks that pretty much stopped me from admitting outright that I was an atheist, because it's a hard realization.
Yeah. In fact, there are a lot of creators that talk about grief beyond belief. Grieving as an atheist, because we don't really have the rituals, or honestly, I think it's a good thing that we don't have the platitudes that a lot of theists will use. But yeah, it's a pretty difficult part of atheism, is, especially if you were religious before. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I had for you. Once again, everybody, his personal Twitter, his channel, Veritas Voices Twitter and YouTube channel links are all in the description. And I like to begin and end all my interviews the same way, with my guests telling us about themselves and their channel. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having this opportunity. I want to thank you for inviting me on and to have this interview with you. Yeah, I am an atheist. I'm actively on Twitter. I'm actively advocating for my views, for science, for what I do think to be a reasonable view to hold about the world. And that's also what our channel is about, giving reasons, talking about things which I think matter, which I think are important within this world, because what I always say on Twitter, what I don't know if I've said it in those exact terms on YouTube, but what I hold is your beliefs affect your actions, and your beliefs affect other beliefs. And if you have a sort of foundational belief in a creator God who has edicts for a world, who maybe does like gays, who created the world in 6 days and everything that counters that is evil, then that is problematic, and that is why we need to discuss these things. That is why I am outspoken against it, because these beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. And that is why I'm outspoken. That is what I'm about. That is what I have advocated in the past, what I continue to advocate, why I'm an anti-theist, why the anti-theism also comes across in our videos, and both with me and Lilith, because Lilith is an anti-theist as well. So that is what I'm about. That is something that the channel is about, and also about the things which I mentioned earlier. And if you're interested in the content we put out, I would greatly appreciate it if you would follow me on Twitter at Renével. The links are below, and hopefully also check out the YouTube channel and the stuff that my co-host and I put out.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. This was a little fun to schedule, considering there's a 6-hour time gap between us, me living in Ohio and you in Germany. So these international interviews are always interesting to schedule. But yeah, thank you.
I found that as well, that time zones are kind of difficult.
Yeah, it'd be nice if things were a little easier, but that's not always the case. But yeah, that is going to do it for this one, everybody. Once again, I know we've said it like 5 times in the last 3 minutes, but you'll find René's information in the description below, personal Twitter, well, at Renével, and the Veritas Voices Twitter and YouTube channel as well. So head on over to all those and definitely give René a follow. He's been a great interview. So yeah, take it easy. Thank you again for coming on, and take it easy, everyone. See you in the next one.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.